Well, I hope you both are well. I'm going to record this for you so you have something to chew on later. And so I'm going to send you a YouTube link. It's going to be a private YouTube link and it's just for you. So I thought about today that we are actually meeting at a time where I normally have my device going off on my alarm at 11 o'clock because that is the time I have a mindful moment in my day. And the reason I chose 11 a.m. because it usually was pretty hot wired, pretty intense, especially on a Monday morning. But if I could just one time a day have a reminder to stop and breathe and to think about what I'm really feeling, what's been going on, so helpful in developing self-awareness. And self-awareness is pretty much the base building block for understanding who you are, how you're showing up in your life, and that boundary issue, how you're dealing with other people in boundaries or with boundaries, and how you're dealing with yourself. So I'm going to ask that you join me in my mindfulness moment. This is what I do. I'll narrate it. I don't narrate it in my real time. So my mindfulness moment alarm just went off on my iPod. Yes, iPod, not cell phone. I'm probably pretty busy. My life probably looks a bit different than yours right now because I have obviously two older girls, and one of them is across the country right now. One is working at home full time. And then I've got a third daughter that's close to graduating this year in high school. She's pretty independent. And my fourth is my 13-year-old, and he's 13. So he's probably a lot more independent than a lot of your younger kids right now. But still lots going on because it's a different kind of lots going on. And not just the homeschooling, but you can see that I'm doing other things, and I'm doing a lot of other things as well. So I've got a lot going on. It doesn't always fit in my day. I'm not thinking 11 a.m. Great, let's just magically stop. Nope. And yet I do, just for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Okay, so here's what I do. 5 beats in. I hold for 5. I exhale for 5. How am I feeling? Pretty excited. I've got a lot going on, and it's all just kind of rolling along. I'm getting much busier when it comes to coaching and when it comes to gardening, and can't maybe start the bed and breakfast this year, but I'm really excited about all the things that are going on behind the scenes. And my tendency is to always want to do more than I have time in the day, but I intentionally time block so that I can enjoy all the different elements of my day and my life. So I feel pretty good right now. It's a good moment. And the thoughts behind my feelings. What are the thoughts behind my feelings? Well, it happens to be on a day where things feel like they're lining up well. If it wasn't, then I would ask myself, so what am I really thinking about that challenging feeling that I'm having? What's the story I'm telling? The story. Because there's usually a story, and it's not usually a good story. It's usually some story that is probably harrowing and probably going to be some trouble, and it's going to insert chaos in my life, or it's going to create something I don't want, some outcome that I don't want. Usually those things don't happen quite the way we think. But today is good. So I'm feeling good. My thoughts are focused. Okay, so then I go back to my day. And I'm sharing that with you today because today I'm going to be talking to you about how we can do boundaries. How do we do boundaries? So I've spent time talking about 3 different elements that I think are super important in creating boundaries in your life. The first one is actually recognizing that you have needs, and what are your needs? The second is how you relate to others. And the third is how you relate to yourself. I know that you all have busy lives and you've got a lot going on. The one thing that I would tell you is if you really want to benefit from this course and from this coaching, and really just from the agreement that you have in life about growing and learning and showing up on purpose in your homeschool and your life, it is be intentional about growth and set aside maybe just 1/2 hour or 1 hour every week to do the work. The work is whatever you choose to sign up for. So you've signed up for this particular work, and it's about building boundaries in your life. But it could just as soon be some book that you think is really compelling, or there's some area of your life that you really know that you need to dig deep in. Whatever it is, whatever growth you're signing up for, because you're human, so you're automatically signed up for growing. Whatever growth you're signing up for right now, or you know you need right now, set aside time every week. And I really do know how challenging that can be, especially when you have way more things going on than just homeschool and trying to do the dishes and do your laundry. You've got a lot of other things going on. But if you can set aside just one time a week where you're going to do something to grow, and it can be journaling, and it can be sitting with this course for 1 hour a week, reading a bit, journaling a bit, processing a bit, deciding to come back in connection with me and have a chat about some of those things, or you can bring it to the Patreon support group and we can chat about those things there. I have amazing conversations with everybody that's part of that. It has been really lovely connecting in as a community there. It feels like I can just have a cup of coffee. The only problem is I'm usually booking it at a time that I shouldn't be drinking a cup of coffee, because I'm not going to sleep if I drink coffee all day. But that's a great place where we can connect and also chat. So your growth, I'm going to show you something. I don't even know how long or how much time you've been able to invest in the course that accompanies this, but you can use this course as a place for you to learn a little bit more, or, you know, a jumping off board for your growth. And so I'm going to do a screen share. I think I'm going to, so that you can see what this course actually comprises. Let's just see if I can do this. So this is the course that you've already purchased. It's Boundaries for the Homeschool Mama. We have gone through the Welcome Homeschool Mama section, the Address Your Relationship with You section, which I think is the most pivotal, because how you relate to you is how you relate to everything else in your life, whether we like it or not. Last week, we got to speak about addressing relationships with others, which is usually the area that we think this is definitely the most important part of boundaries, but I don't really think it is. I think it is the natural symptoms to how we're relating to ourselves. So I talked about boundary principles on engaging relationships. Not everyone will like you, and you won't like everyone either. Can you be separate from others, but also live alongside others? The most challenging element of our entire lives in relationship to others is to actually truly be ourselves and allow others to fully be themselves and still connect and meet people's needs. I talk about not ignoring issues with your kids. Why I think we should teach children no. That probably is the most parenting advice that I'm going to give you. And it is straight from how I really think about things. I want to not tell my children no. I really want to just consciously parent, as they say nowadays. And what I interpret that is that really just listen to the hearts and the emotions of my child. And it doesn't matter what they say, it doesn't matter how they come across, it doesn't matter what they do, that I will just openly allow it, accept it, and let it be. And I have learned and believe that that is at least not a reality in my sphere. And I don't really think it is a reality for anyone. But you can check that out, because that is like the pinnacle, that is the epitome, I should say, of what I'm going to share about parenting advice. And at the same time, give them eyeball to eyeball time. That attachment theory enters in here, that Gordon Neufeld, hold on to your kids book that we studied in our Homeschool Mamas book club, eyeball to eyeball time, when we give them our heart and we're really listening to their hearts, that attachment, that usually makes the telling your child no easier. It also gives them what they need. We're going to assess how we engage our kids, because how we think we show up and how we actually show up is not always the same. And I think sometimes that's the reason for mom guilt, is because we know deep in our soul, this is really not the way we want to show up with our kids. And yet you're not going to see guilt from me. I'm not going to make you feel bad that you yelled at your kids 20 minutes before the session. And that's the reason you couldn't be here, because I have been there and done that. And I know that the reasons why I was doing that wasn't because I was a bad mom. It was because I didn't know how to do the thing. I didn't understand what I needed. I didn't understand what they needed. I didn't know how to actually put into practice the strategies that actually would make this thing work. So assess how you're engaging your kids. Don't try to be the best mom. First of all, there is no perfect mom. It's not a thing. But when we try too hard to be the best mom, and that's the goal in our relationship with our child, then every time we're not the best mom, we say, I'm not the best mom. What's wrong with me? Okay, well, it's not a thing. It's just not a thing. You're put here on the earth to learn from them. Not like they're your teacher per se, maybe, but because they are the people that are in your life, helping you uncover and understand yourself and to continue to grow. And you are also there for them for that purpose. And you have a role in their lives for a purpose. But being the best mom, like, what is that for anyways? That's not our goal. So I encourage you to check out that section, because I think it would be of great value for a lot of the things that we have spoken to in the last, especially in the last section, or the last session that we had together. At the end of each of the sessions, I share these things. A note to you, homeschool mama. Don't you look like how we look so cute and young and our coffee cups are empty? No, that's not possible. Let's think back to the original boundary breaking challenge that we discussed way early in the intensive, say, or in the first session. How do you think you showing up in your relationships differently influences that boundary challenge? Would you share below what your insights are to this past section? Every time you share a little bit in the boundary, building boundaries comment section, you're actually helping encourage or give an insight to someone else that's following this course. Your vulnerability is truly valuable to me. I recognize what a treasure it is. And I also know that it is of value to other people because they're trying to figure stuff out too. So what are your greatest insights? And I want to know what should have been discussed but wasn't. What other things are you thinking might be part of this boundary issue but haven't surfaced till now? So now, what will your homeschool and your life look like in 6 months with built-in boundaries? What might be possible if you showed up in your relationships differently, both by expecting different things from others and by being that expectation or satisfaction for others? What will your kids learn through you developing healthier relationships with others? We build boundaries so we can build authenticity, freedom, and purpose in our homeschools and our lives. That's the goal. We become more us, so authentic. We have more freedom because there's a whole bunch more expansiveness or space for us to really do our lives the way we want to show up on purpose. Just not so big. Like the culture is always calling us to do more things and do just way too much. We're not living our lives on purpose when we live the way the culture expects us to. But when we build boundaries, real boundaries, we build authenticity, freedom, and purpose in our lives. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can send it to me in email. I'd be appreciative if you put some of your thoughts in the comment section. Listen to the audio if you like. Sometimes I find that that's a really useful approach when I am doing the laundry, doing the dishes, gardening, random things around the yard. Okay, so today we were going to talk all about how to instill boundaries. But before you begin the next section, I'm going to ask you, what was your biggest insight from our last coaching session? What are the actions you're committed to taking? And how will you do it? How will you make yourself gently accountable? Because no guilt-inducing here. Was there something you wanted to say but didn't? What have been the earthquakes that you've noticed since you've begun to take notice of your boundary challenges? Have you found a time and space to be alone, to listen to this audio, to read the readings, and dig deep in your journal? And are there any other thoughts you want to share in the comments section for other boundary builders? Okay, so how to do boundaries. Before I share my thoughts, grab your journal or grab a notebook or just get the notes section of your device and write down how you think you should do boundaries based on the things that you've explored over the last few weeks. So you can put a pause on this video if you want right now. Okay, so how to do boundaries. Why do I put a picture of a kiddo about my kid's age playing chess? Because I think this is a strategic, long-term game. Somewhat strategic. Life teaches, and so we're not always anticipating that we're going to be learning the things that we're going to be learning, but we can be intentional about the long-term game. Mostly that we're acknowledging it is indeed a long-term game. We are not going to figure everything out right away, because you're learning to address your needs, define your relationships, relate with kindness toward yourself, all long-term game efforts. When boundaries are first introduced to you, we may not even know what that means. And I have heard that even in the last week, that I'm not really sure I know what that means. And I know that that conversation wasn't because that person had never heard that word. It wasn't because they didn't have a construct of how it really, could be defined in a dictionary. It was because they really didn't know what it should look like in their own life. The key is to understand yourself, to get a lot clearer about who you are, why you're here, to get clear on your identity, and also to get clear on what's going on in your world, what you want in your world. And you can't do that without self-awareness. So that is why I'll always go back to these self-awareness approaches of mindfulness, checking in with your thoughts and your body once a day, developing a practice to address your big emotions, incorporating a daily journal practice, listening to others actively, getting curious and listening to their subtext, meditating, praying, assessing your relationships with others and yourself regularly, gentle accountability, and creating your own boundary affirmations. I'm going to let you listen into the audio. I share a little bit more about each of those in this section. But when we download the boundary practices in the Building Boundaries Journaling Workbook, this is what you will see. Okay, here, we finally loaded boundary practices. The beauty of this homeschool life is that we can create a family experience from the ground up. Of course, there are all sorts of moving parts and variables we can't control, but we can influence so much, choose so much, and engage on purpose. So though our vision won't always align entirely with reality, we can aspire to so much. We simply have to determine what we want. And oftentimes we don't know what we want. Can I hear an amen? I've created this boundary practice checklist for you. You can include it in your journal. You can pin it up on your mirror. These are the things that encourage you to dig deep into who you are, what do you value, what do you want from other people, what do you want from yourself. So enable gentle accountability. Possibilities for gentle accountability is you connecting with each other, or you connecting with a friendship that's outside of our community, and somebody that you know you can be vulnerable and authentic with that is also on a similar journey. You can connect in the Patreon support chat once a month. You can connect, and this is another thought that I've had, is maybe every 3 to 6 months we could, or maybe 3 or 4 times a year, we could create a group, kind of like an intensive, but have a good old-fashioned conversation focused just on this, about upholding our boundaries or building our boundaries in our lives. Not sure what we'd call that, but anyways, we'll call it boundary builders for right now. Let me know if you have a thought about that. The second thing you want to do is accept all your feelings. The reason I say that is because it seems kind of obvious that you should be doing that, but I know that we don't like feeling certain feelings. We don't like feeling angry with our children. Well, most of us don't. And there are other feelings that we don't like feeling, like sadness. We want to just have a clear sense of what we're doing in our life, know how to deal with some, sadness inducing scenario, and just do life and move past the feeling. Or confusion. When we feel confused, we just want to have someone decide what the plan is and keep going. Sometimes we have to accept that our feelings require a lot of energy from us. They can't all just be brushed past, walked past. We cannot just have it figured out quickly. But one thing for sure, we know, we feel big feelings. It's called being human. Include a spiritual practice. Okay, this is a tricky one for me to speak to, because I know that we all have different spiritual practices, or we have different worldviews. We have different views about how we are in the world. For me, it is an anchor, knowing that I am here for a reason, which means that someone has me here for a reason. And what's the reason? Or what's the bigger picture? And if that right there speaks to you, there is a bigger picture, then you'll understand why I find it important to include a spiritual practice in my life. That practice is going to look different for everybody, but do it on purpose and do it regularly to anchor you. Practice self-compassion. I'm going to go into greater depth with that in a moment. Actively listen to others. As important as doing that for yourself in the self-compassion realm. Actively listen to yourself. Create boundary affirmations. We'll talk about that in a minute. Assess your relationship with yourself and make your choices and own your voices. So we're choosing to live life on purpose. We're choosing to include certain relationships in our lives for particular reasons. Now you have to ask yourself, what's the reason? They can be very good reasons. That person is supportive toward me, or that person helps me clarify why I think what I think, even if they're not pleasant to be around, they really get me thinking. Or that person, whatever, you fill in the blank. But just because is not the answer. I'm not having a relationship with people just because they chose me. Perhaps they are there for a reason, and they're put there for a bigger reason than what we can see. But if we are uncomfortable with how we're engaging, it doesn't have to continue the way that it is. We have to decide who we want to include and why we want to include them. So I chat about exploring your big emotions. All sorts of big emotions, right? Especially in the homeschool, because we're with our kids, we're saturated having so much time with them that we get a lot clearer over the years, or more confused, muddied, and frustrated, because we are always dealing with our big emotions. The biggest triggers you have will probably be triggered by your kids. But our goal is to accept all our feelings. We can recognize sometimes that we don't feel our feelings, but when we have those mindfulness moments in the day, we're more present in our bodies, and we can identify where we're feeling them with our body or inside our body. But in a way that you can do that is through guided visualizations, body scans, and meditations that you can find easily, inexpensively on YouTube. What I have listed in here might not be valuable to you. You might feel uncomfortable with certain ones. Great, move on, find something else. But every one of them help you to develop a self-compassion approach to you. So I ask you to write in your journal the 3 most uncomfortable big emotions you experience. When do you first remember experiencing it? Because usually our original story of that really big emotion sets a precedence for our life and how we're going to engage it for the rest of our life. What was the reaction of the person that was near you when you felt it? What did you understand about that big emotion as a result of experiencing it? And how have you chosen to engage that big emotion since? So when you daily engage your mindfulness moments, ask yourself about your thoughts and the story that you're telling yourself. I would really like to hear what you have shared in this section. If you feel comfortable sharing it with me, I'd love to hear that. This is a self-compassion technique right here, is really you coming to understand your feelings, because we can spend our entire lives not really understanding why we feel what we feel. Naturally, I'm going to encourage you to get into journaling. Yes, no surprise there. And I know that there is definitely one of you that is like, I just don't know about this journaling thing. And it's just not natural for me to process on paper. And sometimes that is just a reality, that we don't process the same. Some of us are more verbal processors and some of us are not. But it will help you get clear. If you look into the research, you'll discover that the writing area of your brain and the thinking and emotional elements of your brain all come together and connect better. That's why you're clearer on what you really are feeling and thinking when you write. You can stop, you can answer these questions, or you can include some of this work, because we've done a lot of journaling work in our time together already. You can use some of these questions as jumping off points in your journal, that time in the week where you set aside a little bit of time just to be separate. And if you haven't written your I Am From poem, this was such a beautiful idea from Julie Bogart's recent book, Raising Critical Thinkers. This is my version of I Am From poem. When we get comfortable with those areas above, we will definitely see more confidence and vision, clarity in our lives. Okay, so the next one is, as I've spoken to, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, scheduling mindful moments. Somebody's got a phone. Do you know every person in my family has a phone except my 13-year-old son and I? Anywho, I got my iPod, that's good enough. I directly show you how to do what I always do with you in a mindfulness moment and the questions that are connected to it. I also have a thought care checklist that you could also pin to your bathroom mirror if you are helped by that. I specifically speak to meditation. There was once upon a time I thought this idea of meditation was, no, I can't do this. It's too hokey and it's too Eastern religion or something. It wasn't what I was taught or how I engage things. And so I just thought, no, this is too off. This is too weird. But I've since learned all it is me being more present. And I've learned through a science researcher, her name is Dr. Caroline Leaf, that your brain actually reorders when you are practicing meditation. it is clarifying for your brain. It's kind of like doing a fast for your brain for a few minutes. So you can look up the research. I'm going to share that down below, but you could also just, probably Google it and find information yourself. More importantly, spend that time actually meditating, even if it's just 5 minutes a day. So I've spoken to including a spiritual practice, however that looks to you. But let's talk about self-compassion. So there's a lot of different ways that you can actually include self-compassionate activities in your day. But ultimately, what they do for you is to help you address your self-criticism, your self-judgment, that not good enough feeling, the guilt feelings, that feeling like you're not doing this perfect enough, but you're really trying. That's what self-compassionate techniques do for you. You could, on one hand, not address them at all. And a lot of moms don't. You could do the opposite of self-compassion. Just beat yourself up, make yourself feel bad, tell yourself how horrible you are, or at the very least, a little bit incompetent or incapable. Most moms do. Or you could address that mean, nasty person and say, no, thanks, but no thanks. I've got to learn to speak to myself as kindly as I expect myself to speak to my kids. So how do you do that? Well, with great effort. Self-awareness, obviously, is one very important one. Ultimately, self-compassion is a way of relating to yourself, relearning how to speak to yourself. If you think how challenging this is, though, this really is like trying to turn the Titanic around before it hit that infamous iceberg. It will be in the beginning so challenging. You're going to think there's no way that I am going to prevent this Titanic mind from hitting that iceberg. I've practiced too often throughout my life to think in a way that hasn't been helpful. And I feel you. I know exactly that experience. And yet, you begin to relate to yourself differently when you do the thing once, and then twice, and then 3 times, and then you keep going. And the more you do it, the stronger you become. Just like you in the gym or you with a bunch of weights. You're strengthening that muscle, kind of hurts when you first do it. Why am I doing this? This is so boring. Or is that just me? But as you do it over and over and over, or you do that yoga practice over and over and over, you just get stronger. Everything comes into greater alignment. You have more balance. You have more longevity. You just feel more able to the task. So with a whole lot of intention and practice, you really can turn things around. In the same vein, I want to say that we want to engage ourselves with self-compassion, but we also want to engage others the same way. And you'll discover that when you do, you are going to experience the same experience in reverse. It's just like a self-compassionate technique to others, and they will more likely abide by your boundaries. Or you'll discover that you really don't need them in your sphere, or it really won't work for you to be fully you and still have a relationship with them. I love what Dalai Lama says about active listening. When you talk, you're only repeating what you already know. But if you listen, you may learn something new. That is why I love coaching. I have been learning the skills over the last few years, the teachable skills, but I've been doing it my entire life. And all it really is, well, it's more to this than just one sentence, but in essence, it is very active, engaged listening. And we don't all have very active, engaged listeners in our lives. In fact, very few of us do. And even those people that are in our lives that really listen, they don't listen to everything, or they have lives themselves, so they have stuff to deal with themselves, and so they're not always available. Having an active listener in our life helps us to get clear a whole lot faster. But there's different levels of listening, because, and I want to share this with you. I overheard one of my kids say a long time ago that I think kids should get a pension. They're not allowed to have a job, but they need money. Old people just die anyways, so they don't really need money. I didn't entirely catch her statement when she first said it because I was distracted. Too much was going on in the minivan. We were driving to town. Then it hit me. Say what? Pension for children? Good thing we weren't in public, because we happened to be living in a village at the time of a lot of retirement, or people that were retired. Sometimes we can multitask when our kids are telling us something. We're a little distracted, but that's because they're telling us their Star Wars dream for the 4th day in a row. Sometimes we mostly tune them out, but smile widely, because we know that that's what they're really looking for. And, you're a mom. So what's in brackets here about you, if you're a non-parent reading this, you might think me heartless, but you're a parent. So you can't have that much going on and be fully engaged with all ears and all your heart all the time. You're driving the vehicle. You got stuff to do. It's really easy to practice, though, not really listening fully. And that is the key that I'm speaking to here, that we need to set aside time to intentionally, wholeheartedly listen. And when we do, we can learn a lot about the person right in front of us. So you can learn more about the kinds of listening we need to do, but I'll say this in essence, that how we listen, when we're deeply listening to people on the regular, we are making them feel heard. We are showing them how to take care of themselves, to practice those self-compassionate approaches toward themselves, even if they never learned that word. We make them feel seen. We make them feel heard. We clarify relationships, and we make the relationships that are solid even more solid and satisfying. I want you to set aside a time to assess your needs and your relationships regularly. That's partly what I'm doing in the Homeschool Mama Retreat, is giving you that opportunity for 4 weeks to do that. I say focus on family harmony and happiness, but I say focus because it is not going to happen all the time. It just isn't. I really wish it would. Clearly, I had the desire for it, or I would never have named my blog Capturing the Charmed Life. Because we know it's not continual. Life throws us stuff that is not so pleasant all the time. We don't have a playbook to our family or our homeschools. But if your homeschool is wildly unhappy and you know it, or if you're just a bit unhappy and you know it, you can spend time focusing on why it's not working, why you're not happy, why there isn't harmony. And essentially, you're signing up for growth to keep working on all of that, on building your relationship to yourself and with others, family harmony and happiness, even though we shouldn't expect that that is what is going to happen in our homes all the time, because we will be sorely disappointed. I think we should still aim our goal towards that end. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that, if you would include it in this comment section. So I spoke to gentle accountability. How do you like that? I couldn't find a picture that would reflect that, but they are just too cute. Seriously, some days I look at that and I go, I want to do that again, right? No, I don't, but they're cute. Okay, so reach out for support. There's something about suffering or feeling like, I'm just not doing this right, or this isn't good, or things aren't working, or I don't like my life, or I don't like how I'm doing something in my life, or I don't like how things are happening in my life, that sometimes we get into those states of mind and we just feel alone in it and isolated. And yet literally everyone has had those feelings or will have those feelings. You know that I have had, if you've been following me long enough, which I think both of you have been, and I know one of you has for a long, long time, you probably see me showing up myself a whole lot differently over the last couple of years. And it is because I'm becoming so much clearer on why I'm here and what I'm doing, like here in this space. And it's exciting for me. It has been such a lifelong journey for me to, I'm going to turn this around so that you can see me while I'm chatting. It has been a lifelong journey for me. All of the things that I share with you, not one of them isn't something that I've had to spend a lot of time and effort in. And as I've shared this before, it's just becoming a whole bunch clearer for me as time goes by, that in the beginning, there's these feelings of overwhelm, or I just don't know what's not working, but it's not working, or I'm unhappy about this thing or that thing. And when we start to instill boundaries, when we start to assess our relationships with others, when we start to assess a relationship with ourselves and assessing our needs, whether we're satisfying our needs and how we're engaging other people, that's like the building block to overwhelm dissipating, like the picture's getting a whole lot clearer. That's the step. And it's a lifelong step. It's not, you figured it out. Yay, you're done with boundaries. Nope, it's not going to end. I don't think it's going to end. If it ends, you let me know, but I really don't think it will. It is powerful though. It's a tool to getting clear on why you're here and who you are. Now that's the next step in what I've been learning over the last years. Maybe it seems obvious to you at first thought that when you feel overwhelmed or uncertain why you have all these feelings, that you start to build boundaries and then it gets clearer, and then you get clearer on what your identity is or who you are. And then because you get clear on who you are, therefore your sense of purpose becomes clearer. Maybe that's obvious to you, but it was not obvious to me that there was a direct connection between those. And now I see over the last couple of years working with you, working with a lot of other people, mostly women, 2 men, that I have learned that there is a succession of those events that happen inside of us. That has happened to me. All of this has happened to me, and it continues to get clearer. And it is so exciting for me because I know that all the roles that I've taken on in my world, like, mom or parent or registered nurse, or I've done all sorts of things before that too, or, working as in a variety of places when I was doing writing or podcasting or coaching or all of these things, they are truly an extension of who I am. So I'm not only able to help you get clear on how to build boundaries, but also I recognize that when you do, then you get a whole lot clearer on who you are and what you're here for. Obviously, one of the biggest things you're here for right now is your kids, not only because you're homeschooling them, but because you're a mom. And so that right there is a big role, and it probably feels pretty saturated right now, as it would at this point. But as time goes by, you get a little clearer that there's more to who you are. And recognizing my point of overwhelm, recognizing how to include boundaries in all those areas I've spoken to, they've had a huge impact on why I'm here and why I'm engaging you. And that's part of my identity and part of my purpose. And so I want to hear from you. What can I do to support you in that? How do I help you in your process or your development? I want to know that too. I would very much appreciate if you would offer me a review of the group, of the Building Boundaries coaching group, and also your experience of the workbook. It means a lot to me, and it turns out that I can tell somebody this is what can happen in your life if you build boundaries into your life over the course of time. But people want to hear from you more than they want to hear from me, because they know that you've had an experience of both me and how I engage you, and whether or not there is a ripple effect or a benefit or a transformation of any sort. So I'd love to hear from you and what you would be able to share. I would also love to hear which of these practices you could include in your real life. If you think there are just too many, there is no way that I'm doing all of this, then I'll encourage you to do this one thing set aside time once a week, 1 hour for you, for growth for you in whatever form that takes. And then gently, accountably connect or continue connecting either with me or with each other or in some form where we can continue the discussion of building boundaries. You're going to notice this as time goes by because I'm about to restart this group with another coaching group. And I'm going to include audio, or I've already got the audio to most of the course, but I'm going to have the audio done by next week, all of it. And so you can listen along while you're doing your mundane activities if you want, or I'm going to include video. A video will eventually come. If you have any feedback as to how the process of the course could go, if you think it should be 8 weeks instead of 4 weeks, if you think there's another element that could be really useful in developing these boundaries, that means a lot to me because, as you know from previous interactions, I will include that in how I put things out there because I know that it actually makes it more useful for people. Okay. So I'm going to return back to that screen for just a couple more minutes. Okay, so you can reach out support to me, but I want to say this too, that if you have come to the place where you realize that you would find it valuable to connect with a therapist, I'm going to put a link up here, but check out BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online version of therapy that is super easy to access. It makes you feel like you can include it at any time of the day because someone somewhere in the world as a therapist is able to probably find the time of day that you could work with. You can actually feel a certain kind of freedom to choose who you want to engage in therapy more easily because you're one-on-one. If you use this link, it is an affiliate link, so you will be contributing to me some, I don't know how much it is, but anyways, a little bit. They'll give me a bit because you've connected with them. Of course, you can continue to access one-on-one mentoring. If you're already connecting with me in the Patreon community, the support group, then you'll be getting some connecting time there. Of course, you should know that I'll never discuss things. My intention is never to bring up something that we've spoken in one of our groups, like a boundary group, because I know that it's pretty vulnerable. So, it'll be a much more casual atmosphere in the support group unless nobody else shows up, and then you and I can just chat, as has been the case the last few weeks. The Homeschool Mama Retreat definitely addresses a few of the biggest emotional challenges that get in the way of your homeschool satisfaction. So that's a chance to do another 4-week cycle of coaching and a different approach to all of this. And of course, you can check out the podcast episodes. There's one that I have that's specifically about how to influence your homeschool with self-compassion. And listen to Brene Brown's podcast because she's got a lot of resources on that, and Kristen Neff as well. She probably would be considered like the industry leader of self-compassion right now. And remember what Brene Brown says, the most compassionate people are the most boundaried people. I love this picture. Okay, make your choices, own your voices. You get to decide what your boundaries are. But how do you know what you need unless you listen to yourself? How do you know what you need unless you know yourself? So get to know yourself and build those boundary affirmations. So I have a few here. I am responsible to take care of my own needs. I respect myself so others can learn to respect me. When my goals and needs are met, I have more energy and mental space to extend nurture to those around me too. The most boundaried persons are the most compassionate persons. Make your choices, own your voices. You can only get this figured out one brick at a time. And my new boundary affirmation, which one of you will know what I'm referring to, but I'll explain this. I love you, Matilda, but you need to step back. Okay, so the discussion was along the lines of, your own voice speaking things that really aren't helpful to you, if you can identify that voice and hear that part of you, get really familiar with that person or that part of your person, the one that is like criticizing or guilting or shaming, and say, listen, I see you, Matilda. I hear you. I know you have a reason for being there. So tell me why you're there. Then listen to why she's there and show her kindness, because she's trying to help you. She's trying to defend you. She's trying to protect you. She's trying to make you feel safe. But then you go, I love you, Matilda, but you need to step back because, Marissa or Britt, you're going to step forward and you're going to take responsibility for my life, not Matilda. Matilda's not the only voice inside of me. So one of your boundary affirmations can be, I love you, Matilda, but you need to take a step back. And of course, I share self-kindness affirmations, and you know that I've got the Homeschool Mama Daily affirmations. So we have to set our minds on what is true, which is the ultimate form of self-compassion. You are going to find the boundary affirmations of the Building Boundaries Journaling Workbook. Which I have here and will come up ever so slowly. We can choose to be proactive and address all of them. Though I recommend choosing one challenge a month. When we focus on one of the things, one of the ways we're speaking to each other or ourselves that isn't very kind, and we just focus on it for once, like one challenge a month, we're more likely to have a lot more impact. So you can self-explore with the following questions, then write your intentions at the top of your journal each morning and to choose to engage the way that you want to engage. I'm going to not show you all of them, but I am going to show you a couple of them. Okay, so this is the boundary affirmations page where you can actually write in your own affirmations. Build boundaries into your homeschool and your life, and discover you feel more fulfilled with your life and relationships because you have enough energy to inhabit your life. You know who you are, and you know why you're here. Okay, congratulations. I wish I could right now have that little congratulations you put in a text message that has that confetti. Imagine lots of confetti. You finished the Building Boundaries course. Now, building boundaries into your homeschool life is a process. It's a long-term game. As you firm up boundaries in your relationships, build into your needs, and address how you relate to yourself, you'll discover you have more energy toward the things you want to do. Expend less emotional energy where you don't want it to go. You'll become more you, and you'll find your unique purpose. I am genuinely happy to connect with you both. You know that, because I just enjoy your company, your presence, and learning from you. That is, you have no idea how much I have learned over the last couple of years as I've actively listened to so many people's thoughts and hearts. So a note to you, Homeschool Mama. Let's think back to that original boundary breaking challenge that we've discussed. How do you think you showing up in your relationships differently influences that boundary challenge? Would you share below what your insights are? Because I'm going to ask you, what has been your greatest insight throughout these 4 weeks? What should have been discussed but wasn't? What other things are you thinking might be part of the boundary issue but haven't surfaced till now? So now, what will your homeschool and your life look like in 6 months with built-in boundaries? What might be possible if you showed up in your relationships differently both by expecting different things from others and by being that expectation for others. What will your kids learn through you developing healthier relationships with others? We build boundaries so we can live and build, or we build boundaries so we can build authenticity, live freedom, and live purpose in our homeschools and our lives. Okay, so I said if you'd like to join the Homeschool Mama group coaching, even if you haven't experienced the Building Boundary course, you're welcome to join, but obviously you've done both. If you know somebody that has probably got challenges and boundaries, but you also know is a homeschool mom, I ask you to invite them to be part of the Building Boundaries group coaching, because that is a huge benefit for, I've discovered this, it's not just them, it's their children. It's what we're teaching our children indirectly. The most important stuff is caught, not taught. So at the very end, very last is really a questionnaire asking if you could just give me a few insights. What were your greatest insights in the course? How did you experience the group environment? Would you tell me what you'd like to see in the course? Do you prefer audio, video, the written word for the course content? Is there enough information? Too much information? I've been told sometimes that's the case. What elements of this course would you recommend to other homeschool mamas? What elements need to be improved? Would you participate in another coaching group? And what topic would most interest you in an upcoming coaching group? I'll tell you that I've got a couple of ideas. No surprise. I'm sure I am replete with ideas, but they directly tie with what I spoke before about, let me just stop the screen share, about, so I've addressed the discussion about overwhelm, and I have a group coaching program about overwhelm, then building boundaries, obviously. And then I've got a couple of ideas, maybe even 3, but relating to identity. Who are you? Helping you to identify who you are and really get clear on who you are. And part of that could be a writing group, because what I've noticed is there are a few, obviously, people that don't care for writing, but there are a lot of writers and very creative kind of people out there. So we could actually create a course on that. And then the other thing is about your purpose, but like your big meta purpose. That one I have not constructed in my mind yet. Of course, I'm going to be creating podcast seasons around all these things, because it is an incredible way for me to explore all of the discussion points and to put it out there and chat with all the people that I'm connecting with, including you. It has been such a pleasure to connect with you and to really listen to your hearts and the things that are the treasures. They're the treasures, and the treasures are the things that are the hardest parts of life. They're also the most beautiful parts of life, the things that are the most confusing elements of life. I am honored to be part of that in your life. I really, really am. And I appreciate the connection that we've had. Let me know how I can help or how I can support you in your time going forward. And congratulations on building boundaries or getting that started in your life. Confetti.